You won 101 games. You were the 1 seed in the American League. You survived the gauntlet of the AL East. And not only did you survive that gauntlet, you had a winning record against every other team in the division. You went 7-6 against the Red Sox and Yankees, 8-5 against the Tampa Bay Rays, a team that had been your Achilles heel in the past. And you go 10-3 against another playoff team in the Toronto Blue Jays. Not only were you the 1 seed, but you really dominated the rest of the division.
Yeah, I mean, they slapped everybody silly. They were ridiculously good.
Yeah.
They won so many close games. They won so many road games, more road wins than anybody in the league with 52. So they were fantastic. 101 wins doesn't lie. They just kept winning. And that's because of the talent that was all around the roster. So, yeah, like you said, I mean, it doesn't matter really who they faced, and maybe you can make the argument that some of the big hitters in the AL East, like the Yankees and Red Sox, had a down year, but I don't really think that matters. They went out and they played whoever was on the schedule, and they beat them. So, yeah, more power to them.
Spent 77 days in first place. You had 48 comeback wins.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of comeback wins. Tells you a lot about this team, tells you a lot about the mentality in the clubhouse. You also went 52-29 on the road this season.
Yeah.
That's really hard to do. That's one of the best road records in all of baseball this season, I think just behind the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, they went into anybody's ballpark, including their own, and they won. And that's just not something that many teams do, let alone teams that didn't make the playoffs last year.
Right.
So when you talk about that jump, I think that in itself proves success.
And one of the coolest things to see this year was, and for me, for somebody who has been on this show for the last, 3-4 years at this point, we have always talked about Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, Grayson Rodriguez, Kyle Bradish down in the minors, what they could potentially contribute down the line. And now, when you are in the 2023 offseason, looking ahead to 2024, when you are pitching the Baltimore Orioles to potential free agents who could be looking to join your team, you can say we have an incredible young core led by 2 superstars in Gunnar Henderson, who is going to win American League Rookie of the Year, Adley Rutschman, who was an all-star, put on a show at the Home Run Derby. He is a household name and one of, if not the best catchers in baseball. And you have 2 young star pitchers in Kyle Bradish, who had the 4th best ERA in baseball this season. In Grayson Rodriguez, who, after being recalled from AAA Norfolk, looked like an ace and showed that potential down the stretch. You have 2 superstars in the lineup, 2 excellent young pitchers. That is a heck of a core that you know is established going into 2024.
And they've got the guy to build around it, Mike Elias.
Yeah.
He's definitely got his work cut out for him for the offseason. He said that's the only thing he thinks about every day of his life is the logjam of prospects and what to do with them. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does with them because, there's no hiding it. They have an incredible amount of young talent, but there's only 9 positions to be filled on the field. Yeah. So you can only really throw out so many guys. So they've got to do something there. And what they will do, I'm sure, will be the right move, but I don't really know what that is. So, and I'm not necessarily sure that Elias does at this moment either.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what they do there. But like you said, they've got 2 superstars that they grew. And they've got Grayson Rodriguez and Kyle Bradish, who both pitched like aces down the stretch. So they've got the talent. It's just about continuing to surround them with guys that are going to get them to the playoffs.
Yeah, and again, that's going to be a whole other show at some point this offseason. Mike Elias was asked at his end-of-the-year press conference about a contract that we saw from somebody like Nathan Eovaldi, who goes for 2-3 years, $30-40 million. I believe it was MASNsports.com's Steve Molesky who asked if Elias felt like he was, going to be able to give out that sort of contract this season, if that was something that they would be looking at. And Mike Elias said, yeah. And he hinted at the fact, too, that they had those kinds of contracts and trades on the table that just didn't end up working out at the end of the day. So we'll see how Elias is able to surround this young core. but it is an excellent one. And let's dive a little bit deeper into those two starting pitchers that I mentioned. Kyle Bradish established himself as a frontline starter. And again, we have talked about it before, but this is somebody who we thought of as, if Kyle Bradish was a number 3 starter in the big leagues, given his prospect status as, he wasn't even a top 5 prospect in this Orioles system, which probably says more about the Orioles system than it says about Kyle Bradish. But we thought of Bradish as a number 3, number 4 starter. And if you got that, you were going to be really happy. Now, I'm safely looking at Kyle Bradish as a very good number 2 starter in this league with the potential to be a number 1. There are only a handful of true ace guys in this league, like true number 1s. That's really hard to find. I wouldn't say that there are 30 of them just because there are guys that are number 1 starters. Not. Probably venture to say there's 10 of them right now, 10, 15 in the league that you could look at and say you're a number 1 guy. Kyle Bradish has that kind of potential, which is not something you could say before the season.
He had an incredible, of course not before the season. I don't think anybody expected that, this kind of year out of him before the season started. But he definitely has the potential to get there. But it's like you said, it's a very difficult thing to do, and I'm not sure that he will. And to do it, you've got to put together like 3 or 4 incredible seasons, or just a couple that are otherworldly. So if he goes out and does this again, yeah, absolutely, he gets that nod. So he definitely has the potential. We've seen that this year, and if he can continue it, that is so huge for the Orioles season. I mean, having a 2.83 ERA is nothing to scoff at, especially in a baseball world in which home runs are king, and people's slugging percentages are higher than they've ever been. So shout out to Bradish.
And Grayson Rodriguez, of course, stumbling in the playoffs a little bit, but he looked awesome since he came back from Norfolk in July. Had a 2.58 ERA in 13 games. We know he had ace potential, and he showed it.
Yeah, I mean, he was fantastic in that second stretch in the majors. He came back in July or June, July, right? July. And he was dominant. I mean, he was dominating hitters. So he comes back. I mean, he could be the one next year. You have 2 guys who could potentially be the ace of your staff.
Right. You have 3 All-Stars in Adley Rutschman, Felix Bautista, and Austin Hayes.
Yennier Cano as well.
And Yennier Cano.
You got 4.
Sorry, 4 All-Stars. Adley Rutschman put on a heck of a show in the Home Run Derby. He already kind of was a household name, but very much became one, which doesn't say a lot about the 2023 season, but it is just cool that the Orioles have these sort of household names with Adley Rutschman. I think Gunnar Henderson is getting there as well. 4 All-Stars, career seasons out of Ryan Mountcastle, Austin Hayes. You had a great season out of Anthony Santander. And then you had solid contributions from veterans that you brought in this year. Kyle Gibson, Adam Frazier, James McCann. Not massive contributors this year. I mean, Kyle Gibson didn't end up starting a playoff game. Adam Frazier turned into, kind of a platoon bat with Jordan Westberg at second base. James McCann was an excellent backup catcher, was really reliable. Those guys didn't propel you to 101 wins this season on the field, but it's hard to say, and it's hard to quantify just what having those guys in the clubhouse meant this season.